Thank you, Judy. I'm excited to be here with Charlotte Anderson on her Carolina Honeybees Farm in Pickens. Thank you for being with us here today, Charlotte.
Well, thank you for coming out. It's a beautiful day to be outside.
It sure is. What motivated you to want to be a beekeeper?
I have always been fascinated by honeybees. It was a neat idea to me that people could take a wild insect and keep it in a man-made box where it could live and be happy and produce a product that they could use. And so I just always thought that was so fascinating in comparison to other insects. We don't think of insects as providing food. So being able to be the manager of the honeybees, I've always thought that was a fascinating idea.
Was it challenging at first when you started?
Beekeeping is very challenging at first. It is a little bit of an expense to get started. There's a lot of terminology to learn. New beekeepers sometimes become overwhelmed by that, and I did also. But if you take it a step at a time and don't get afraid of everything that could go wrong, then you can really enjoy the hobby. And it's one of those things that the more you learn, the more you want to learn. You want to learn how to help your bees and how to be a better beekeeper.
Well, obviously you did learn because you were an award-winning beekeeper with honor.
Thank you.
In 2012, you were the Beekeeper of the Year. And you, not only that, you're one of very few women to be in this profession. Did that provoke you to want to excel further in your beekeeping
It did
business?
Somewhat. Beekeeping has traditionally been something that was associated with men. We are having more and more ladies who are involved in beekeeping today, and ladies actually become great beekeepers. They have the skill set of having patience to really excel in the little fine-tuned things that you have to do when you're managing with your bees. It was a great honor for me to be the 2012 Beekeeper of the Year for South Carolina. We have about 3,000 beekeepers in South Carolina, and there have been other women Beekeepers of the Year, but it had been like 20 years or so ago. And it was a real honor for me. I was not expecting it, but I was real proud to have accomplished that.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So how long did it take for you once you started to get the honor of Beekeeper of the Year?
Well, the Beekeeper of the Year is chosen by our peers. We are chosen based on an application of things that we do for the community and our success in beekeeping and giving back to the community. The South Carolina Beekeepers Association takes nominations from across the state, and then a panel decides who to choose for that honor for the year. So anyone has the potential to become Beekeeper of the Year. But it was also a great triumph for me that the year that I received that honor, I also became the first woman in South Carolina to get to the Master Beekeeper level. That's something that we have not had in South Carolina until I broke that glass ceiling.
Wow, you broke the mold.
I broke the mold. I didn't do it just to be the first woman. I did it because I want to be the best beekeeper I can be, to take care of my bees in the most efficient manner.
What all does it mean to be a master beekeeper?
A master beekeeper, the title in itself is just an honor. Of course, you can be just a new beekeeper and in some ways be a better beekeeper than a master beekeeper. It's like a degree in any profession. It is worthwhile because you have taken the time and the energy to learn, to take classes, to take tests, to do community service. It's not the title itself, but it's the journey along the way that makes you a better beekeeper. So even if I had not went through the program, it doesn't mean I couldn't have been a great beekeeper, but my journey to meet the requirements for each level in the program did help me to learn things that otherwise I probably wouldn't have studied. And those things come back to help me now on a day-to-day basis when I'm managing my hives. When I see something strange, maybe I'll remember, hey, I remember hearing about that at a conference I went to, or I remember reading that in a biology book. So it helps make the everyday experience more meaningful for me.
So that's a very special title that means so much more than just a title. It's a journey, as you said.
It's the journey and not just the title at the end that really matters.
Wow, that's a great reflection. So how many hives did you start out with and how many do you have today?
Well, I started out with approximately 2 hives around 2006. Like many new beekeepers, I grew quickly to have more hives, too many more. Because beekeeping is sort of like some ladies with shoes. You think you can never have enough and you need more.
Right.
But just as you can run out of closet space with your shoes, you can run out of time to manage your colonies when it comes to beekeeping. So I started out with 2, and then I went up to about 25. And what I found with 25 hives is that I could not be as good a beekeeper as I wanted to be, because I also have a part-time job. And my bees needed certain things done at certain times of the year. With 25 hives, I just didn't have enough time to be a good beekeeper. So I decided that I could scale down my hives. Now I run between 10 and 15. That allows me to have more time to hopefully be a better beekeeper with each hive and make them be productive. My idea was that 10 or 15 well-managed hives should produce as much honey as 20 or 25 hives that are not well-managed.
That makes perfect sense. So how much time overall is dedicated to running Carolina Honeybees Farm?
I have a good bit of time that is dedicated to mine, because while beekeeping is not the type of profession that requires you to do something every day, such as milking cows or feeding horses, you have certain things that you have to do to the bees at certain times of the year. And those things change from year to year based on the weather conditions.
Oh.
So in addition to taking care of the bees, I also then, once the honey's ready, I have to bottle the honey, I have to harvest it, I have to bottle it, I have to sell it, I have to go to the sales. I make beeswax candles, I make locally produced goat milk and honey soap. So each one of those products takes time in its own.
I bet.
It's supposed to be a part-time job, but it kind of becomes fairly a full-time job. For a backyard beekeeper with just a couple of hives, it doesn't take a great deal of time. You just have to learn how to do the right thing at the right time.
So you mentioned things are different during different seasons. So is this a year-round job?
It is a year-round job. It's not something you have to do every day, but every part of the year there's something that the bees will need. Whether it's in the springtime when the colonies are getting larger and we want to make sure they're healthy and well fed, or it's in the summer when honey boxes for us are full and they need to be removed, or it's in the fall when winter is coming, we need to make sure the colonies are healthy and that they have enough food left in the colony to do them over the winter. All of those situations have to be handled on an individual hive basis.
How do they survive during the winter? They have enough honey for the winter, so they don't technically go into hibernation? What is the process for them?
No, they don't go into technical hibernation. What the bees will do is when cold weather comes, they will cluster together in the hive close to one another, much like us in a crowded building. We'll huddle together when we're cold. They will cluster in the hive. They will eat honey that they have kept, because a good beekeeper always tries to leave enough honey for the bees to have a supply over the winter. And experience tells us how to estimate how much honey they will need in that hive based on an average winter. So we do that, and then the bees will eat this honey, and they will actually vibrate their wing muscles, and that generates heat, much like you and I rubbing our arm and causing friction.
Right.
And that heat heats the whole cluster of bees.
Wow.
Not the whole inside, but the whole cluster. When we have a warm, beautiful day in winter, the bees will actually come out and fly around. But later in the day, when the temperatures drop, the bees will go back into the colony and will cluster together.
Okay.
So here in South Carolina, bees normally do not freeze to death, but they can starve to death.
Okay.
If they run out of honey, then they're unable to produce heat, and then they die of the cold.
Can you break down the whole process of how bees make honey for us?
Sure, pretty much so. The bee is driven to work. That's why we call them busy as a bee. And they are useful to us producing honey because they will continue to work and bring in nectar as long as there is nectar out there to get and or a place in the hive to put it. So the worker bees, which are all female, will go out to the flowers, and it's not just the green flowers we see in our yards, but as important, it is the tree flowers, which have a lot of nectar. They will go out and suck up that nectar into a special part of their stomach called a honey stomach. They bring it back to the hive, and the worker bee will transfer that nectar from her honey stomach through her mouth to a house bee, who will take it and put it in her honey stomach. She will add enzymes to it. And the process, the chemical process of changing that nectar into honey will begin. When that process is almost complete, then she will expel that honey from her mouth and place it in the honeycomb cells. And it will continue to lose humidity. The water content will drop until it gets what we call ripe. Then the honey has reached the state of honey. It has been transformed from nectar, which is watery, to the honey with all the enzyme value that we know honey to be. After it's put in that honeycomb, then the bees will take beeswax and seal that comb off so that that honey will stay fresh and protected and clean. And it will stay in that comb until they use it or until we harvest it.
I read that you don't have GMO crops in the area.
No, we do not.
Genetically modified.
Right.
And you don't have any pesticides in the site.
No.
Have you experienced colony collapse disorder? Or has that been something that you think, in your opinion, may have spared you in your hives?
I think colony collapse disorder has definitely spared me and most hobby beekeepers, especially in the Carolina area. I have spoken with a few that believe they may have had some of that, but colony collapse disorder by term was something that happens when the colony fails and we can't figure out why. The normal reasons for colony failure are not there. It's a strange situation and we're not really seeing that in our area. I have not experienced it at all. However, I do experience a higher than we used to have number of bees that die in the winter. I'm experiencing the same problems that beekeepers nationwide are experiencing as far as bees not being as vital as they used to be.
Right. It's a worldwide epidemic.
It totally
so it's good
is.
to hear that it's not here.
Yes.
So we're glad that it's the case with you.
Yes.
Where can we find the soap, the candles, and the honey?
Okay. You can get all of my products through my online store, which is carolinahoneybees.com. You can also pick up my honey at the Swamp Rabbit Cafe in Greenville on Cedar Road.
Okay.
And you can buy my soap and candles at Be Well Honey in Pickens.
Good to know. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be out here on such a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day to be with the bees.
Thank you for being here with us on Focus on the Palmetto State.
Thank you.
It was great to meet you.
have you. Thank you.